Well, as I mentioned earlier, the poker machines battle is just one of many being waged by the Gillard government. The setbacks are exhausting Labor and drowning out good news it would like to promote, like last week's better-than-expected national accounts. Even though the big financial picture here is good, especially when you look at what's happening around the world, Australians are still worried about the cost of living. The Finance Minister, Penny Wong, is our guest tonight, and to speak to her in Canberra is political editor Chris Uhlmann.
Penny Wong, welcome.
Good to be with you.
Now first, no matter what the virtues of poker machine pre-commitment, it seems tailor-made to annoy Labor's base in New South Wales and Queensland. Is it worth it?
Oh, there's no doubt there's a very coordinated campaign being run, but I do think it's important to step back a minute and just think of what are the values at the core of this reform. We're a Labor government. Labor governments look after people who are vulnerable. And people who are addicted to gambling are vulnerable, and that's what this reform is about.
What Andrew Wilkie has said is that he expects you to deliver this, and that means also delivering the votes of other independents. Now that seems slim. Isn't that an unreasonable demand?
Well, look, we'll continue to work through how this reform is delivered with Mr Wilkie and more broadly. But I think essentially it remains a reform that's about making sure that those people in Australia, the very small minority of people who play poker machines or gamble, who are addicted to this, for whom this is an enormous problem for their families, that we do something about protecting those people.
Now we saw great figures on the national accounts last week for the broader economy, but are households actually feeling that?
Well, interestingly, one of the many positive things out of the national accounts was what's happening in the household sector. And I think on this program before we've spoken about consumers becoming more cautious. And what the account showed, apart from the fact that the economy had grown 1.2% in the June quarter, what it also showed is that consumption had returned broadly to trend. So that's a good thing. People aren't spending on the same things, but they are spending. And I think that's a reflection, notwithstanding the enormous sort of carry-on by the opposition, it's a reflection of the strong fundamentals in the Australian economy.
But when we look at those fundamentals, we see figures today, business confidence figures are very bad indeed.
Well, I mean, I think we need to realise where the global economy is. We're seeing a lot of volatility on world markets. We're seeing a lot of concerns, particularly around Europe and to some extent the United States. We're not immune from that. What that does remind us of course, is the importance of maintaining good economic management here in Australia, and part of that is a sound fiscal policy. One of the things that the government's very clear about is the importance of a sound fiscal strategy, which is why in this context particularly, Joe Hockey's $70 billion black hole and his refusal to front up to election costings is so reckless and irresponsible. What they're saying is, even though things are volatile, even though we know fiscal policy is important, we're not going to be transparent, we're not going to provide our costings.
But if we were to see problems in Europe again and problems in the United States and credit started drying up again, would the government be in a position to do anything on the fiscal front?
Well, we face this volatility with a lot of strength. Remember, we came through the global financial crisis in much better shape than most other economies. We entered the global financial crisis with the same level of unemployment as the United States. We've come through it. Our unemployment rate at 5.3, theirs at above 9%. Our economy is growing, and we are 5% above pre-GFC levels. Many other economies haven't got there yet. A lot of investment coming, and a very strong financial sector. These are very good qualities to face this volatility.
But don't you find it extraordinary, with all of this good news around on the economic front, business confidence is down, consumer confidence is down. Do you think that there is a question over confidence in this government? I
think this is about two things. I think there is a lot of volatility globally, but I think we have seen an opposition which has been prepared to cross the line. They are talking down the Australian economy, and they are doing so openly. And what it reminds us of is this is an opposition that is prepared to trash any convention, prepared to be completely reckless and irresponsible if they think they can gain a political point out of it, even if it means talking down the economy.
And in order to get your border protection policy up now, you are relying on the coalition, and that seems like a receding hope. It sounds like they are not going to support you on that. And where do you go from here?
Well, this is a very interesting point for Mr Abbott. What the Prime Minister has said is that we'll put legislation into the Parliament that will restore the right of executive government to determine how to implement offshore processing. This is something he supports. So he's really in a position now of being clear with the Australian people whether he's prepared to accept that national interest point or whether he really reveals himself as being absolutely nothing other than somebody who plays politics on at every opportunity.
But doesn't he leave you with absolutely nowhere to go?
Well, this is an issue for Mr Abbott now. We will put the legislation in. And we have said this is not about our policy nor his. It's legislation which would enable an executive government of whatever political persuasion to implement an offshore processing regime. And I think the issue is, Mr Abbott, are you up for the national interest? Or are you only ever about short-term political gains?
You introduced the carbon tax bills today, and the Prime Minister did say some time ago that when the detail was known that the people would turn in favour of it. They haven't turned yet. Do you think that they ever will turn in favour of it?
I think people want action on climate change, and we've seen over the years that various politicians have promised action. John Howard, Malcolm Turnbull, and previously Tony Abbott, and now he's opposed to it. This is a very important reform. It is a tough reform, and I was very proud of the Prime Minister today when she introduced the bills, and I was very proud of what she said, because I think what she said was very wise, that we are all judged by history. I think history has judged the Senate that opposed the carbon price very poorly. Right. And I think people will judge this Parliament accordingly.
Finally, just briefly, how are you being judged? Because the Prime Minister said today that hard reforms meant hard days for the government, but aren't the hard days brought about by bad management?
Oh, look, I think hard days are brought about by tough reforms and needing to do something that is not about short-term political gain, but about the long-term interests of the nation, in the face of an opposition that is not interested in anything that's about the long term. So I guess at the moment what we're looking at is one side of politics, the government that says, look, we have to do something here for the long term, whether it's on the budget, the economy, carbon pricing, and we have an opposition that says, let's just look to today.
Penny Wong, thank you.
Good to be with you.